When I was 8 years old, I started to develop an interest in computers, but I never could have expected that interest would take me to reviewing the very last episode of the PBS Kids series Arthur on my very own animation and gaming show on a website called YouTube. Let's get into the final Arthur episode, All Grown Up. The final Arthur episode. Hi everybody, Bloodmoon Bobby here, and I can't believe I'm reviewing the very last episode of Arthur. Yes, the long-running PBS Kids series has finally come to an end with the episode All Grown Up, and I'm going to talk about it today. So, what's All Grown Up about? In this episode, Arthur, Francine, Buster, and Muffy come across this octopus game in the library that purports to predict their futures. I like the premise of this episode. I like how, as Arthur basically says at the beginning, there are certain things in life that you get that you'd never expect, but at the same time, it ends up being really good for you, which leads me into what jobs these characters got, because I certainly didn't expect like most of these characters to get the jobs they had. There's a couple where I was like, that's expected, but a lot of them took me aback a little. But when I thought back to a lot of the interests and the personalities of the characters, it started to make sense for me. So let's start off with Buster. What does he end up with? I think he's going to be some sort of creative writing teacher, because in the scene when the kids have grown up, he sits down with the adult Arthur and tells him, I've got a lot of stories to read. And he also tells him that Arthur's sister Kate wrote a story about a baby who could read animal minds. And I think in this job, when I thought about it, it does make sense for Buster, especially because he's a very imaginative character. There were a lot of times, especially in the earlier episodes, where whenever he or his friends got into a situation, Buster would often think that aliens have done it, and he's also had all these like nightmares and daydreams where aliens were involved. So I could see that being part of a creative mind, and why he would end up becoming, at least I think, a creative writing teacher. Because like I said, he mentions that, he's a teacher and he has to read a lot of stories. Next character is Francine, who becomes a business person who runs a sneaker business. So, again, this one was pretty surprising to me too, because I always thought that Francine was going to end up becoming an Olympic athlete, especially since she really likes to play sports like hockey, football, and soccer. But then again, I thought about how Francine is a student athlete, and how she definitely has a brash personality, but she could also be, quite a respectful person. So I think those kind of attributes, you put them together, would make her, I think it would make sense for her to become a business person who runs a business running sneakers, especially since it would fit well with her personality and her interests. Next character I'll talk about is Muffy, and she ends up running for mayor. And this one was probably the first one where I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. I did think that maybe Muffy was going to end up being some sort of fashion designer, but then again, she's always been that sort of character who has always been interested in power, in taking charge in school projects, and having some really bold ideas. So I could see that being a part of her running for mayor. The only question is, how would she handle money? That's kind of a scary thing that I'll leave others to discuss, because I'm kind of nervous to try to figure that out. But anyway, moving on to probably the most discussed character from this episode, that would be DW. Now, before I knew anything about what DW ended up doing, I had really no idea what she was going to do. I know there was that one episode where she said she wanted to go to Mars, but I kind of wondered if that was just going to be a passing interest. Does DW become an astronaut? Nope, she ends up becoming a police officer. And I gotta be honest, it's still kind of weird to me seeing DW in a police uniform. But then it reminded me of a prior episode where DW gets this whistle and she's going around and basically calling out people whenever she thinks they're breaking the rules. I remember there's a scene where in that episode where she blows the whistle on Pal and she says, Pal isn't using the handrail when he's walking down the stairs. And Arthur is like, he doesn't have hands. So, and when you combine that with how pushy and bossy DW can be, and also the fact there were times when she was in hairy situations, especially with Arthur, that she would always you call for her mom to help with something like if Arthur was watching the TV when she wanted to watch Mary Moo Cow. I could see those attributes working to her advantage as a police officer. So it's the kind of thing where, again, it's surprising to me, but I felt in the end it made sense. And last but not least, I'm going to be talking about Arthur. What does he become? Interestingly enough, when the Octopus game was predicting the careers of all the characters, Arthur's remained unclear. So I was like, what's going to happen? I thought he was going to become a teacher, but what ends up happening is that he becomes a graphic novel artist. And I think this one, it works because I think about how Arthur clearly has a love of reading. He, of course, loves to read novels. But I also thought about how I get the sense from interviews and such that the character of Arthur is supposed to be inspired by and based on his creator, Mark Brown. And it reminded me about how of this interview Mark Brown did on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where he said that when he was a little kid, he liked to draw, and his grandma liked his drawings, and that's what inspired him to, go into writing children's books. So I could see that going as well for Arthur. And I like to think of that scene where Mark Brown literally plays himself in the episode, and he encourages Arthur to take this book on drawing animals. And I like to think of it as Mark Brown telling his younger self and encouraging his younger self, hey, you should, continue to pursue drawing. I think you're going to be really good at it. And also the fact that Arthur really likes comic books and comic book characters like Bionic Bunny and Dark Bunny. I could see why they made him into a graphic novel artist. And I do not dare give away the ending. I know I said at the beginning that this was going to be a spoiler review, but the ending of this episode really makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really clever, so I dare not give it away. Speaking of which, I do like a lot of the Easter eggs that are in this episode. Like I said, Mark Brown plays himself. I thought that was really clever. But what I also thought was a really smart idea was that Michael Yarmush, the actor who originally played Arthur when the show first aired, he came back and he actually voices the adult Arthur. And I think that was a really smart idea, getting the original actor to play the adult version of Arthur. So I thought that was a really neat Easter egg. I remember when it got to the credits, I was looking around for Michael Yarmush's name, and I was like, yeah, it's him. I think that's a really smart idea. If I did have to nitpick as far as what are my problems with this episode, I would say that there are a couple of those modern touches that I don't really like about the newer Arthur episode. For instance, there's a couple times when the animation looked a little too smooth, and one of the daydream sequences was kind of cringy to me. Before the machine shows us what happens in the future, Buster initially imagines what will happen if he's a teacher, and he imagines he's in a classroom with clones of what looks like the character, the brain, and they're all demanding that Buster teaches him math and science. And while I get why Buster is feeling that way, the visual is still kind of cringy to me. But admittedly, I think that the flaws of this episode are really nitpicky. I still think that this was a really nice way to end the series. As my sister would put this is the kind of series finale that shows you that, hey, down the road, these characters are going to end up doing great things and they're going to be really well. So I thought that All Grown Up was a really great way to end the Arthur series. And it's really weird, like, saying goodbye to a show that, has practically been a part of my life. Literally, Arthur, the TV series, literally started airing only a few months after I was born. uh, me and the show were from 1996. So while it is weird to say goodbye to the show that was such a part of my entertainment, at the same time, I really applaud the team and I really thank the team behind Arthur and Mark Brown for working on the series. To this day, it remains my favorite PBS Kids series. And I would even go as far as to say that this episode reminded me, especially because Arthur's show has been around basically as long as I've been alive. It was also a good reminder for me to remind myself how far I've come. I mean, I certainly couldn't have predicted, 20 some years ago that I was going to end up making videos and talking about, how I feel about, these shows and movies I watch. But I'm, really glad, how life is going, and I'm really glad that Arthur ended in this way. So let me know your thoughts down below. How do you personally feel about All Grown Up? And also, let me know what you think of Arthur as a series. What are your favorite episodes? Even though I gave you my 2 cents about how I feel about the Arthur finale, the truth is now I really want to hear from you. Let me know what you think of the Arthur series and its finale down below in the comments. Until next time, this has been Blood Moon Bobby, and thank you all for watching. Hi everyone, thanks for watching this Blood Moon Bobby video. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel to see more of my videos and ring the bell to be notified about my latest uploads. Don't forget to follow me on social media for my latest opinions and video updates. I hope to see you next time.